Welcome to HogvilleNET YouTube Live, coming to you from Jose's Bar and Grill in Tawny Town on location. This is my pregame setup when the Arkansas Razorbacks for their home games. It's a big one tonight. The first ever ACC SEC challenge is unranked, at this time unranked Arkansas, losers of three of its last four games, host number 7 Duke. These are the kind of games that you just love to have. You dream of getting, if you're a Razorback fan, into Bud Walton Arena. We know that place, when it's packed, and I believe it'll be jam-packed and raucous tonight. We know the students have already been camping outside, getting ready to get in there. But these are the kind of games you dream about, and who knows if something like this comes back around or when it will. But the Razorback fan base has got to be thankful for this opportunity. Nationally televised game, 8:15 Central Time tonight, so that'll be on ESPN. Nationally televised game. And again, I think the late start helps fans get to Bud Walton Arena who are planning to attend. A lot of times you'll see late arrivals just because of traffic and people getting off work. This place should be packed and settled in by the time this game tips off. I think it's advantage Arkansas just from the Bud Walton Arena standpoint. It always is. I don't care who the opponent is. But I think it's an even more of an advantage to have a little bit more of a late start in terms of the fans being ready to just blow the roof off. I think there's a little bit maybe more there. Don't want to put too much stock into that, but I do like the fact that this game starts a little later. So that's me. But, just kind of moving through some things early to talk about this. I mentioned it's the first ever ACC SEC challenge. Arkansas, kind of split what it was doing in the now defunct Big 12 SEC challenge. Undefeated at home, would lose on the road, and you alternate every year. So Arkansas's got a great track record in these challenge games. When you look at it from playing at home standpoint, it has nothing to do with what might happen tonight. Arkansas could be shorthanded. One of the biggest things we need to talk about is Tremont Mark, the very talented, more so offensively than defensively so far. I think that surprised a lot of people, but Arkansas's leading scorer at over 18 points a game. We know he had the big 34-point game against North Carolina before going down with that injury late in that game, about a minute left. The game was decided, but he's, put strapped down to a spine board, wheeled off the court on a stretcher, went and had MRI testing done at a local hospital in the Bahamas. Arkansas did not do well. We know they went 1 of 2 in the battle for Atlantis. But I think the worst part of that was having your key guy, your best player so far, potentially injured. The good news was the MRI test came back negative. So for the most part on that, it's good news. But the other part is it may take a while for him to be acclimated and be comfortable enough to get back on the floor. We don't know that. When media met with Musman on Monday, and later he talked more about it Monday night on his coach's show, but Tremont Mark was going to be seen by a spine specialist. And there were other things going on there in terms of question marks still hanging around and lingering about his availability at some point. So you kind of keep an eye on things. Obviously, if you're a Razorback fan, you want what's best for Tremont Mark. How soon does he get back really depends on his health and how he's feeling. This could be a situation where he comes into today doubtful or questionable at best. You hope for the best for him, whether he's able to play tonight or not. Arkansas could certainly use him if he's ready to go. That's really, outside of him, Jalen Graham, his back spasms have kept him out of Arkansas's last 4 games. Well, we mentioned it, Arkansas's lost 3 of 4. It started at home against North Carolina, Greensboro before the trip for battle for Atlantis in the Bahamas. And so, then you went 1 and 2 there, and Graham's missed all of those games. So all hands on deck. We've seen Arkansas in previous years in the struggle points have injury issues. That's not an excuse. It's just a fact of some things that have played out. And so if both of those guys are missing out, it makes it even more of a challenge for what you have left over. But look, Arkansas's got a deep team. It's got a lot of college experience. We talked about Arkansas, the recruiting in the offseason, Musman being able to have versatility at each position in depth, quality depth. So it's next man up, and you don't want to use those as excuses. Although I will say Tremont Mark again, when you go back to, I know people are tired of talking about Purdue, but Purdue's the best team in the country right now, and Arkansas, defeated the Boilermakers last month about this time at the end of October. It's an exhibition game, but both teams were trying to win. So as bad as Arkansas's looked lately, that's one proof of concept not that long ago that Arkansas has the pieces to win on these big stages, especially at Bud Walton Arena where you beat Purdue. They did suffer that first non-conference loss under Musman in Bud Walton Arena to Greensboro. This is an opportunity, the next opportunity at home to fix that. Number 7 Duke comes in as one of the best offensive teams in the country. It's a good, not great. I would say probably better than average. Good to really good defensively. I don't know if they're really good yet, but somewhere in between good and really good. That's how I'm measuring it. Not great, but they've got a great offense. Musman talked about, some of the players that could have gone pro. It really starts with Filipowski, very versatile, stretch 4 type. Can beat you in the low post, can beat you in the mid post, can beat you free throw line extended. He'll step out and be competent from 3. What happened to the aggressiveness of, I think it was Battle. I missed that. I need to see that comment come back over. I'm a little slow on getting the comments. But Filipowski's a guy that's going to be a trouble spot potentially for Arkansas. The one thing that's very interesting is when you go back to the Purdue game and Zach Edey, when you look at the Renault kid, the 7-1 forward for Stanford, who was the leading scorer for the Cardinal coming in the Arkansas game, and then Armando Baycott from North Carolina, when you really look at all 3 of those big men matchups, Arkansas hasn't been awful there. What happened to the aggressiveness of Battle? Let's see. He seems tentative a little bit more now. Before he was on fire. Well, Battle is a guy that even when he was scoring 21 points for Arkansas, it was pretty efficient. He wasn't taking a ton of shots to get there. And he gets to the free throw line. Some of his field goal attempts are wiped out. When you get fouled, they don't count that field goal attempt. And so he gets the free throw line in bulk. We'll see. I mean, every Razorback's got to be accountable for this slide. Not everybody's been at their best. Even Tremont Mark, as good as he's been for the most part offensively, had a couple of games where he's been in foul trouble. That's hurt Arkansas. Additionally, I don't know that he's been as good as advertised on defense in a situation where nobody has so far. So I'm not picking on him or singling out a guy that's hurt. I'm just talking the basketball side of it and trying to speak the truth of what I see. That's my what my recall is after watching each one of these games. But going back to Filipowski, I think going back to the front line guys Arkansas faced coming into this game, they've actually done a pretty good job neutralizing guys or staying competitive there and not letting the big man beat them. This is a different kind of big man because I think he's the most versatile of those names I mentioned. Zach Edey's a 12 feet in really guy in terms of his impact. I'd say the same about Baycott. Renault is a guy that can stretch the floor a little bit. Arkansas took him away in that game. Held him to half his point scoring average. He did rebound the ball pretty well, but this is a game where I think Filipowski brings so many different problems because he can beat you really inside and out, all the way out to the 3-point line. And he is really good in 2-man game. Musman talked about this, but that's what I've noticed as well watching Duke. His rolls, he has short rolls off pick and roll. And so if he's not popping, he doesn't always roll hard to the basket. He'll stay shallow, get to the mid post, free throw line extended, get to the nail, where he's very versatile. If you get the ball back to him there, he can kind of pick and choose because of his skill set. This was a guy that was a potential lottery pick had he chosen that path in 2023. He decided to come back to Duke, and so you're looking at a guy that's a projected first rounder, potential lottery pick. We'll see how things play out. It's still November, believe it or not. One more day to go after this. By the way, Arkansas with 3 losses in November. They came into this season 22-1, the Razorbacks did, under Eric Musman. Last year, they suffered their first November loss under Muss. That was to Creighton, a very good Creighton team that would go on to the lead out in Maui. In the semifinals, Arkansas lost by 3. Bounced back in the very next game in Maui, won the 3rd-place game, ended up beating a San Diego State team in overtime that was not only ranked at the time, but would go on and be the national runner-up. So Arkansas has done so well in November, even though a lot of those games, when you look at going 22-1, were at home against lower mid-majors. I mean, they went and won. Not only did they go 2-1 in Maui, 2 years before that, they went to the Hall of Fame Classic in Kansas City and beat Kansas State and Cincinnati. They've got a Georgia Tech road win in that November record back in Muss's first year. So they've been really, really good in November until now. Now they've got 3 losses. Could be 4 after that. Arkansas started the season 3-0. There were some trouble spots in that perfect start that Musman wasn't happy about. He talked a lot about that physicality in the paint, lack of it, trouble finishing off defensive possessions with rebounds and not yielding offensive rebounds. We've seen Arkansas struggle to generate turnovers, get steals, live ball turnovers to get in transition. Their ball movement on offense has been stale and stagnant, even though you had a Tremont Mark and some other very talented players like Caleb Battle and some other guys that can go get buckets. There's not a lot of easy scores, and Arkansas's had its problems with turnovers because of that mano-a-mano one-on-one play. Defenses can sit down on that; they can pack it in. It's what Arkansas struggled with last year. Part of the drive game is getting to the free throw line. Arkansas wants to be one of the best in the country, and they have been. But when you have a lot of turnovers and you're fouling at the other end because your defense is porous and not working inside and out, then the other team's kind of equalizing you at the free throw line. And so that's no longer an advantage, and some of this other stuff you're not doing. The other team's doing some of those things better, and now they're an advantage opponent. And that's how you get yourself caught up in a 3 losses in 4-game stretch. The point of doing these is not to come on and be just negative. But when you've lost 3 or 4, you're really talking about the problem areas, and when there's a lot of them, it's not just 1 or 2 things you can Band-Aid over. You got to get better somewhere, though. It's got to start somewhere. Is it a reasonable expectation to think Arkansas can get everything corrected in one game on one night? You never know. Sometimes those things happen. It's probably more realistic to think maybe they'll shore up 1 or 2 things and it'll be good enough with some of the other stuff that they can figure out a way to stay in a game, be close at the end, and find a way to win it. That's what they did against Purdue. That's been their best game so far, and it's unfortunate it doesn't count because Arkansas is the only team to beat Purdue, if you want to call it a win. I mean, it was in exhibition season. I get that. I understand at some point we got to let it go. But it wasn't really that long ago relative to being able to say, well, this team obviously can't win big games or beat good competition. Yes, it can. It's got the pieces. It's proven once. Again, not going to count on the resume, the net, any of it, the record, none. But so Arkansas's got another opportunity tonight. This is another quad 1 win opportunity. Arkansas is 0-2 in its last 2 games against what will be quad 1 win or loss. Whoever, the teams that beat Arkansas, that'll end up being a quad 1 win for them on those neutral site games. Tonight, even at home, Duke's hovering around top 10 in KenPom. When the net rankings come out, they're fairly similar. They're not exactly the same. But Duke's, you got to beat a top 30 team at home in net. Duke should be there. And barring a collapse, if Arkansas can win tonight, it'll be the first quad 1 win at some point on the resume. You got to start somewhere with them. Eric Musselman teams, we know they've always had their problem areas later on. Usually, maybe late December, early to mid-January, and then they kind of figure it out. Last season, there were a lot more ups and downs because of the injuries. But those injuries were through. Brazil was lost after game 8. Nick Smith Jr. missed more than he played. And Arkansas had a lot of, they basically replaced the entire roster, save for 2 players. This team's a little different, more returnees. Brazil's still working his way back through. You go back to this last North Carolina game, Trevor and Brazil, to me, I just talked about Filipowski. Brazil's Arkansas's first team All-SEC preseason pick. He's on the Naismith watch list. This is the kind of guy that you need to step up. Now, he had the 2 big double-double games in the Bahamas, and those were Arkansas's first 2 games when you looked at the win over Stanford and the loss to Memphis. But defensively, if he's not blocking a few shots, which he's had some good games outside of that, he's really been movable inside. He's a little bit matador. He'll get out of the way. He's got to be a little tougher around the basket. It's not really his game, back to the basket or being a space eater and throwing his weight around the basket. But you've got to give more resistance, and you've got to use your strengths, your frame, and your length to figure out how to do that and be more effective than he's been. So against Filipowski tonight, this is a matchup where we don't know exactly who's going to guard who and for how long. But when you go back I'm going to go back to Purdue. Zach Edey and Trevor and Brazil are 2 very different players. Statistically and impact-wise, it was very close in that game. And you can't have a Trevor and Brazil against North Carolina, 14th ranked, laying a goose egg on the board. And that's what happened. The same thing was with Devo Davis in that game. He had another one of those games where he didn't take a shot or only took one. I think in that one he didn't attempt one. You got to have more impact from these guys at both ends than what they showed against Carolina. El Ellis, who was, he was tabbed and really the guy that Arkansas was hoping under Musselman would be able to transition to more of a lead guard this year and balance some of that scoring, but run the team. And with pace, good decision making, get the ball to people on time, on target, and just be a floor leader out there. And that has not translated yet. A couple of games maybe, but for the most part, he looks uncomfortable in that role. his best basketball is when he's been able to flip that switch to score, and in little stretches of the game, he'll go and get you some buckets. That didn't even translate in the Bahamas. He was playing off the bench, did not make a field goal to 0 for 10, had 3 assists in 3 games, and defensively, he has not been good on the perimeter. Nobody really has, but he's one as well. And so we talked a little bit. Someone asked about Battle. I think Battle, next to Tremont Mark's, probably been the most consistent offensive player that Arkansas's had. You'd like to see Arkansas figure out a way to involve Brazile more in the actual offense, but it's even hard to know who gets involved as a result of the offense, because the offense doesn't look like it has a design where ball movement actually gets easy looks or involves specific players playing to their strengths, other than when that gets late in the shot clock, a lot of talented one-on-one players are left to their own devices to go get a shot, maybe get fouled and get to the free throw. And again, that's a recipe for disaster. You're not getting easy scores. You're not getting as many open looks. That kind of ball play leads to more turnovers and problems with that. And then defensively, when you're not getting steals, you can't offset that as much. You can't win those battles. I mentioned the free throw line. Arkansas has been fouling like crazy. They did that a year ago. This team is not right now statistically a good three-point shooting team. The ball's not moving. It doesn't have energy. Guys aren't in rhythm. When you have to break off a one-on-one, mano-a-mano play so often, it's hard to do. Even when a guy gets on a burner like Tremont Mark, now you're basically saying, I need that guy to beat those 5, because the other teams are getting it multiple ways. Even David Jones, who had 36 the other night, it wasn't just him. And his game led to him being a facilitator. He was able to use his ability to score and scare the pants off Arkansas and the way they defended him to set other guys up. So you need that kind of play. We don't know if Tremont Mark's going to be available tonight. Again, this has been Arkansas's most consistently good player. It's mostly been on offense. Arkansas has done a poor job on closeouts defensively, on three-point shooters, on walling off drives, on being physical, or at least having a resistance, a presence physically to, sort of discourage drives all the way to the basket. Sometimes you just got to get in the way of guys. And Arkansas's not done a good job of that. It's a lot of matador and a lot of just, okay, if you're going to leave the gate open, I'm walking through. There's too much of that. When teams get into their two-man game, they're playing smartly of it. There's ball movement on the weak side. The ball's going side to side on both sides, not just one side, where it's even harder to score. These are the problems Arkansas's have on offense, and other teams are exploiting Arkansas's defense on the other end. And so it's been multiple where Arkansas's hurting. I mean, transition defense has not been good. And then you'll see Arkansas shore up maybe 1 or 2 areas that they weren't very good in the game before, but then they slip somewhere else in more than one way. And so they just haven't been consistently good in any multiple departments. And when you look at the many facets of the game, whether it's defending in the paint, defending the three-point line, dealing with two-man game on pick and pop, pick and roll, dribble handoffs defensively. On the offensive end, they're a one-trick pony. And so they've kind of painted themselves in a corner with a lot of their problems. I go back to Purdue because Arkansas had success in a lot of the things that they're failing right now. And you can't find a better measuring stick than Purdue. I know it doesn't count on the record, and I keep saying that because I want to acknowledge I'm not saying it should. What I'm saying is that actually happened. That game happened, you actually won it. And so you had to have done some good things and played well together to beat a team like that. Wherever it is, if it's on Mars and it'll never count, not seen by anybody else other than the guys there, it happened. And so Arkansas's got to figure out what was working then, what have they where have they, I think a lot of this is confidence of guys, timing with guys. Devo Davis, we take for granted he's been in the system for 4 years, but it seems like every year he's having to get used to new teammates and guys that play a certain way and trying to figure that out and acclimate with them. So even a veteran guy, when you have a lot of roster makeover and turnover, is still learning some stuff as well. I'm not using that as an excuse for Devo. I think Devo needs to step up. The only other negative I'm going to get through and get away from real quick is the last 3 games. When you look at what Arkansas did in the Bahamas, you had 5 different occasions where there was either a technical foul or a flagrant foul, and you had it with 3 different players. And Trevor Brazile with 60% of those situations. Arkansas's got to me, this says a lot right now about the mindset of this team. Things aren't going well, there's adversity, and they're not even handling adversity well. So if you can't handle adversity well in situations, it says more, I think, about where you are when it's not the little cheap stuff after the whistle, but your ability to overcome and fix things on the court as you're going. I think those little things are saying right now there's more frustration than belief. And so these guys have got to buy into each other. They've got to trust each other. The ball's got to move better. And they need to clean up the extracurricular stuff. Go play basketball. Let that do your talking. And so I know I'm kind of preachy. I've gotten like that lately. But again, when you're on a skid like Arkansas's been, 3 losses in 4 games, you want to bring up some of this stuff because it matters right now until they start fixing things. And they've always done that under Eric Melsman. Why should anybody have any doubt that it'll happen again at some point? You'll miss some opportunities early to get quad wins, and you're out of the rankings right now. By the way, HogvilleNET YouTube Live, I want to thank a couple of guys that I got to interview yesterday. Scotty Thurman, the Hogs icon. If you haven't seen our HogvilleNET interview with Scotty Thurman, you got plenty of time before the game. We spent about 35 minutes together, sat down with him on HogvilleNET YouTube Live, and we really went through the history. The team he was on that beat Duke in the national championship game, went through some of the other history. He's very familiar with this roster. I mean, Scotty's the head coach of Little Rock Parkview Patriots high school basketball team in Central Arkansas. Yet he's had his eye on the Hogs, continues to. Had a lot of good talking points about this team, things he sees. But just kind of going through a lot of stuff. It was good to sit down with Scotty Thurman. Then we had a second interview that is also out on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. David Shoemate was generous with his time. He's the play-by-play announcer, the broadcasting director for Blue Devils IMG. So behind enemy lines, David Shoemate with really good insight about the Duke Blue Devils. And we had I see someone saying Duke win tonight. Well, and I don't know if anybody, by the way, a lot of times when I'm doing these, news will come over. I'll be surprised if Arkansas has any announcement on Tremont Mark this early. But if anybody sees something on him or Graham come out that's credible, share it on here because I don't have the opportunity to look at anything while I'm doing the pregame. But just going back through it, it was good to have David Shoemate talk about Duke. So there's a couple interviews I've tweeted out. You can go to HogvilleNET under the jump ball form if you want to see those interviews. We included those. Do you think Blocker starts tonight? Maybe. He started the last 2 games. We'll see what is up Musselman's sleeve. We don't know about Tremont Mark's status. We don't know if he continues to play battle off the bench in a kind of a 6-man role. We don't know if Jeremiah Davenport's a guy he looks at. There's some other ways he could go with this. Chandler Lawson's a guy that has started games. Mekhi Mitchell's been in the lineup. I don't think he's performed to where you would hope he would. This late in his career, in his second season in Arkansas, he's had a couple of decent performances, a double-double earlier that helped Arkansas to look really good. But just no one's been consistent. I look at, again, Trevor Brazile. What has Arkansas done really to involve him on offense? What have they done to help him get some easy scores? That's what offense should do. It should help guys get easy scores, not just be, here, it's your turn with the ball. Show us your talent and go get a bucket because we believe in you. Sure, there's going to be some of that. You've got to drive the ball to get to the free throw line. But you can let the ball movement do the work first, get defenses moving out of position, swing it side to side, inside and out, high, low. There's multiple ways to do that. Arkansas's ball movement off the ball the player movement off the ball is stagnant. So there's just a lot of stuff. What does Arkansas do to maybe make some tweaks or corrections with Muss, dialing that stuff up? This could be a game where, it reminds me a lot. Going through Duke, I talked about Filipowski. Proctor's a very talented lead guard with good size, good skill, double-figure score, leads the team in assists. But this is a team that averages nearly 19 assists per game. One of the leaders in college basketball there in the helper department, about 9 turnovers. So low in turnovers, 2-1 as a team in assist-to-turnover ratio is really, really good. This means as a poor defensive team, your head is on a swivel trying to keep assignment integrity, number one, and then when you've got good offense, good ball movement, good passing, it's going to get you somewhat out of position. You've got to have good rotations, good help. If you're going to gap this team, you've got to be smart about it because they're going to beat you with the next pass. You've got to figure out ways to turn this team over. Arkansas's not been good at that to begin with. Do we snap our fingers and expect them to be able to gobble up steals and get the turnover game going against a team like this? You just never know how a game's going to play out. Sometimes it's about the athletic matchups and some of the other things. But Duke's got a lot of really good players. Jeremy Rhodes, a veteran guard, a senior guard that was in the Elite Eight game 2 years ago. So was Devo Davis. So both teams have a guy like that that's been in this game a couple of years ago with different teammates. But, guys that have performed really at high levels on the highest stages. I don't see this as a world-beating Duke team. They go about 9 deep. They can play multiple ways. They're not a one-trick pony. That's Arkansas's problem. It's not Duke's problem. They can play big lineups with skill. They can play small ball with skill, and everything is about high IQ guys, a veteran team, guys that could have gone pro that came back. We talked about Filipowski, Proctor, Roach. Mark Mitchell's another talented 6'9" forward that can go get it done. A couple of freshmen, Jared McCain, who's been in the Team USA stuff. One of the, was a 5-star player in high school. He's a freshman. Caleb Foster, 6'5", might be a first-round pick. Both of those guys are very productive and efficient. McCain shooting over 46% from 3. This is a Duke team. Not only is the assist-to-turnover ratio elite, they shoot an elite percentage inside the arc. They're good behind the arc, 8 makes per game, about 35%. So in both cases, better than Arkansas right now. Arkansas should be better from 3. The offense is failing the Hogs. The ball's not moving enough to be good anywhere. Not even really in the mid-range, because you're getting a lot of turnovers, and you're just not, and because your defense is porous and the fouling has been there, you're not getting enough advantage in free throws. You're not getting in turnovers. You're just not checking enough boxes in ways that are better than your opponent. And, this is a stretch of season where we haven't seen before. Arkansas playing really tough teams. I mean, even after Duke, you've got a good mid-major in Furman coming in on Monday at Bud Walton Arena. Furman's in the same conference as Greensboro, the Southern Conference. Furman knocked off 4-seed Virginia in the NCAA tournament last year. So this is a good team. Then you look and you turn around, you've got Oklahoma. Right now, ranked top 25 in KenPom. Undefeated, 25th ranked in the AP poll now, 6-0. So and we don't know where Oklahoma will be in a week or so, but they're still a good team, and you're playing them on a neutral site. So you're going to have at least tonight, and then against Oklahoma, likely 2 more quad 1 win opportunities to maybe even things up relative to where you are now at 0-2 against quad 1. You hope Greensboro wins every game out and ends up being at least a quad 2 loss. Maybe, you're hoping not quad 3, certainly not quad 4. You need Greensboro to get on a roll there. Just resume-wise, it's not a necessity. It would be nice, and it might be a necessity depending upon how shaky things go. I mean, Joe Lenardi, when he came out his updated bracketology, ESPN bracketologist, Arkansas's been a 3 seed, then they were a 4 seed, then they were a 5, 6, 7 seed. Now he's got them as one of the last 4 buys, a 10 seed, and that's technically on the bubble. It's still November, but the point is, you're looking at this as a grading system as you go. The season's not going to end tomorrow and you're stuck with a 10 seed, but it's a grading system. It's a good way to kind of gauge where your team is as it goes. And so it tells you Arkansas's got a lot of work to do. Going to be plenty of opportunities even when they get out of December and into SEC play to get quad 1 win. You'll get some at home. If Mark's not playing tonight, maybe battle starts and we get off to a hot start. Musman's tried to go with Davenport. He did some decent things against Carolina. It just wasn't enough. He was trying to get more size on the wing defensively. It didn't really work well. He did hit a 3. He hit a mid-range shot. He got to the foul line and knocked down both free throws. I still think guys are figuring out how they fit. And he's one of them. Battle's still one of them. Battle's he's a guy that can go get buckets. But when the ball's not moving really well, it makes his job even harder. As gifted as he is as a one-on-one player, that's what he and Mark are. So there's not a lot of assists coming out of their creation. Their shot creation is rim-driven. They're locked in on that rim, and they're hoisting shots, and they're talented. But if that's your diet, if that's the entirety of your diet, you're a one-course freaking meal, and you got to have more than that. You want to see some helpers come from those guys. Because when you're good like that, some teams may try to double. They may come and bring a double early to get you off the ball. You don't know how each team's going to strategically deal with it. But Arkansas's got to move the ball better to make teams pay for whatever they try to do to defend. And it can't just be one-on-one. That should be your late shot clock if nothing else is working. And Arkansas gets late in shot clocks because nothing else is working. But the reason that is because there's a lot of standing and the guys looking for gaps to start driving. And there's more dribbling than ball movement via the pass. And it's easier for defenses just to dig in. It just is. And you see that. You see Arkansas really struggle to get up good shots. And, as good as Mark was getting in that zone the other day, you're not going to beat a lot of teams having one guy going solo artist like that. Battle plays that way. He's been efficient. He hasn't had to jack up 12, 13, 14 shots. He's probably had a couple or 3 games where he's taken more than 10 shots. But for the most part, his 21-point games, he's 8, 9 shots, 7 maybe, hitting some threes in there, getting to the free throw line. He's been efficient in some games. But at the same time, he's not going to give you much more offensively in terms of, okay, I'm also moving that thing. Now teams don't know what to do. They can kind of zero in. So Arkansas defensively, this is a tough challenge. I mentioned Duke's offense. Duke's a good defensive team, top 30 according to KenPom, 27th coming into today. Arkansas's 60th. So if you believe that, Duke's the better team on both sides of the ball. Top 10, number 9 in KenPom in offense, 27th in defense. What do those really mean when you have to step on the court? You got different matchups. Arkansas slumping. Some of this is a matter of getting. You got to start somewhere. For me, it's always been with Musselman on the defensive end. Can they shore up enough there to overcome some of the stuff that maybe is not all ready to be polished on offense? I think that's the first thing we look at tonight. Where are they defensively? Could this be a game where it's just a shootout? If it is, I think that's advantage Duke because I think they play a better brand of basketball based on it statistically and what guys bring to the table. But I don't know. I mean, you're playing at home. What's Bud Walton's value? In a game like this, it could be 8 to 10 points. It might not be. Arkansas, if Tremont Mark's not out there and they're not, and they don't have Graham back, they're a little bit shorthanded and they're, while slumping. Other guys have to step up. Conversely, you've seen teams not have guys. We don't know yet. If no Mark, I don't know. I'm saying if. Battle looks like a young Devo. Battle or Blocker? I think Battle doesn't look like Devo to me. Completely different players. One's a more polished offensive player. Well, that's someone's opinion, so I'm not. If that's your opinion, but I think if Blocker reminds me of a young Devo. I think Bay Falls should play more. Well, he played a little bit against North Carolina. Musselman scrapped the rotation, man. He just said, "Look, I'm going to put all 12 in that were available." And that's what he did in the first half. Against Carolina, Arkansas fell behind by 12, 23-11, and that's what his decision was. And it actually helped. Put your veterans down. Put your starters down. Let them watch for a little bit. Let some of these other guys bring some energy and see what they can do. Arkansas got some stops. There were some good defensive stretches in that period of time. Fall got a blocked shot. I don't know if we're going to see Bay Fall tonight. Maybe we do. I think we need to see Trevor Brazile in his best. I've called for that 2 or 3 times. He did have the 2 double-double games out in the Bahamas. He brings energy and defense. You're talking about Bay Fall? Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that when his motor's going, he's pretty quick for a 7-footer, 6'11", 7-footer. Got good quickness, good hops. Times his when he goes up and blocks shots, he times those pretty well. That's been evident to me since I've been covering him for a few years now. He needs to see what he has on the bench now. Well, he's played a lot of guys. L. Ellis needs to come to life. Well, I think he's in no man's land right now. I don't think he's comfortable in a lead guard spot, and the scorer instincts he has instinctively has helped Arkansas in stretches. And I think in the Bahamas, playing off the bench, and I don't think he now understands. He's like, well, I'm instinctively this. I'm trying to be this, and I think it's gotten in his head a little bit. Defensively, he's one of many that need that. I mean, Arkansas's, advertised best defenders coming into the season. Devo Davis and Tremont Mark haven't been. They haven't been. Outside of occasions. And so the rest of them, L. Ellis is one of them. That's, he hasn't been good on that end. And offensively, he's in kind of no man purgatory a little bit. They got to figure out a role for him and how it's going to work. I'm not saying it can't be some level of lead guard. I just don't know what that looks like right now based on what I've seen because he's not been comfortable with that. He'll have moments. And he's had a couple of good games against 2 of the mid-majors. Would Devo do better come off the bench? Musselman's moved him in and out of the starting lineup in his career. He's been good in both ways. He also has stretches. We know that. I mean, he did not have a great run in Maui as well as Arkansas did over there last year. It wasn't Devo's event. And, he came back and, sat out a game. And there was some other stuff, reasons given for that. But he stepped away for a game. And, Maui was not a great experience for him. I don't think the Bahamas were either. In fact, Arkansas, things are broken on offense when a guy like El Ellis doesn't score in 3 games, and when Trevor Brazile and Devo Davis in the same game against a ranked North Carolina team don't scratch. I mean, there's just a lot of dysfunction right now on that side of the ball, and defense has been pretty bad. So it seems like I'm dwelling on it. We're 35 minutes in. Once again, I want to thank everybody for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm here live on location, Jose's Bar and Grill in Town. Great place to be, great place to eat. I got my usual order waiting on me, which I'll carry back. I carry back to the 501. I save this for the drive back if I'm on an empty stomach at that point. I need something to get me through to get me home at 4 a.m. This late start's going to assure I don't get home sooner than 4 a.m. I always go back to Little Rock on game days, no matter how late the game. A lot of work to do before the game and after. It's a lot of fun. This will be a great crowd. I talked about interviewing Scotty Thurman. This is a guy that is planning to be here as head coach of a high school team in Little Rock, the storied Little Rock Parkview team. That's a great program. He's had success there, but peeling himself away for this game. I mean, we all know what Scotty meant to this series, and what he means to Arkansas's lone national title, and what he meant for the program in general. A lot of great games, a lot of great performances by Scotty. A first-team All-SEC pick all 3 of his seasons. That's how good he was. And I'm glad he's going to be able to be there. I got a feeling Nolan and a bunch of folks will be there. Muss was putting the blame on Blocker, but it was Devo. Yeah, Muss is trying to tamp down expectations for Blocker. And I got the feeling he did that stuff the year that Devo and J. Will finally got the green light, and he finally took the leash off and finally realized that some of the alternatives that he was playing ahead of those guys weren't as good. That took him a while. I thought he was a little stubborn about that. We'll see if that's the case here. I think he's right. Blocker does a great job of getting into passing lanes, getting into guys. He blocks shots. He gets steals at 6'2", and then he hits the glass. When your guards sell out on the offensive glass, that means somebody might not be getting back in transition. And so he's just pointing out that sometimes when you see the effort and the hustle play, as a fan, you're thinking, well, that's exactly what we need. Well, Arkansas needs more of that. But usually it's your guards that you're counting on because of their ability to get up and down faster, and usually they're defending on the perimeter anyway when a shot goes up to get back. And so you've got to figure out as a player what's my best move here? Do I get back and defend? Do I crash the glass? Blocker instinctively goes in there. He knows how to battle for the ball. He actually helped Arkansas win possessions doing that. I personally like it and think you got to figure out a way then to get other guys to get back if you've got Blocker on the floor. My opinion, but Musselman's not wrong because he brings up a fact. If you're doing one thing, there's something else that needs to be accounted for that maybe a guy that you count on to do that is not in position to do. So, yeah, we can say blame Blocker. I think he's just pointing out facets of the game that there's truth to. One of our biggest weaknesses is no one in the paint when a shot goes up. Now, look, it's been like Moses parting the Red Sea in Arkansas's attempts to give up no middle drives, or even if guys are getting it from the wings, they're just getting these wide open lanes. And then Arkansas, to me, their bigs are getting out of the way. They're yielding too much space. They're not getting the spots to turn guys away. The guards aren't doing a good job of stopping drives. The closeouts are slow. I think the help defense rotations have been off. Guys are a lot of ball watching at both ends. Blocker is the best point guard we've got. I don't think he's a natural point guard, but I think he might be when you look at him defensively, and the fact that his energy on offense, I think he's just a spark plug. And so he's a guy that's not going to look to take every shot. But so far, when he's put the ball on the floor, he's had a lot easier than most of Arkansas's guard getting by his man and then getting all the way. He's got to finish those. He struggled in the Bahamas finishing at the rim. He's got to do a better job of that. Shooting the ball from the perimeter, I haven't seen enough in college. I'm not sure that he's on the level of some of these other shooter scorers in terms of just that part of it. Is he Arkansas's best point guard? I mean, I don't know exactly what that means right now because I don't know. I need to see more of him. The offense is so stagnant, it's hard to know who would be good facilitating because the ball movement's not there. And you can't put it on just one person. Somehow I think the design might not fit the personnel, or the personnel is not up to speed yet for the design to make sense and for the ball to move better. So something's got to give there. I think Blocker is part of the solution because of how hard he plays, how tough he is, how he can make plays at both ends, not just on offense. Arkansas's got too many guys trying to make plays on offense, and on defense, there's not enough of that. He's a guy that will do some of that. He can help Arkansas generate some steals. He'll block some shots, just getting into guys. I mean, he did it against North Carolina. So, yeah, I think Blocker could be a key for Arkansas moving forward. We'll see how long it takes Musselman to fully believe that, implement it that way, or if he just decides to go a different route. You never know with what Muss could do there. I mean, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, it was Chris Likes, who was on the floor a lot closing time because of his free throw shooting. But he played a lot in the middles of those games, and I didn't think defensively he was up to snuff. And I thought a lot of his decision making on the ball was not very good. The trade-off was, he might get hot, hit a couple of shots, and then at the end of games, he was going to go to the free throw line and knock down free throws. K.K. Robinson was a guy Musselman opted not to use. And I think I understand that because that was not as much about what was going on that season as looking ahead and who he had coming in. I get it. But sometimes Musselman's gone a different direction than what I would do. But I'm sitting here doing a YouTube live, and Musselman's getting ready as a multi-million-dollar head coach who's got a lot of great success. So I'm going to defer to his decision-making. But I think it's always fair to bring things into question and to have an opinion, especially when you watch a lot of basketball, pay attention to a lot of it. And sometimes, some of the things I've thought have ended up being right. So what? Musselman's always gotten it figured out. And so even if he comes around to things a little bit later, Arkansas has been the benefit because he's not just making changes and tweaks. He does it to a level where Arkansas takes it to the next level, and they've been really good in the postseason. Until that doesn't happen, you have no reason to believe it won't. I mean, that's talking faith. I'm not going to preach and say have faith, but I think results based, when you look at it, it's been a pretty good algorithm that at some point he's going to fine tune things to the point where Arkansas looks like a really good basketball team. And again, I go back to the Purdue game because that's all I've got, but it still matters to that degree to say there was evidence that this could be a good team. We've seen it. Now it didn't count, but so can they get back to that? How soon can they? How soon can they even be better maybe than that team was that day? There's a potential for that. I've been disappointed in Arkansas's 5 play. I think Brazil has not looked like a National Player of the Year candidate for the most part. A couple of games isn't enough, but he's a guy that was out a year. You can't lay that all at the feet of his, just on him not performing, because it may take him a little more time. Who knows how much more time to feel fully comfortable. Some of the stuff on defense might have something to do with his, psyche regarding the knee. You just never know. Because he does kind of clear out and get out of the way of a lot of stuff in there. But a lot of Hogs do. All right, we're almost 45 minutes in. Also, Arkansas on a recruiting note, a lot of players want to attend this game. Several players that aren't going to be able to make it told me they were going to try to get it figured out and make it, but they've got their scheduling in their high school season. They've got games and just can't be here. But 3 that are supposed to be here, unless something changes with somebody else, these 3, I'm told, plan to be here. 5-star national top 10, Jalen Montanati, a 6'7" wing out of Owasso, Oklahoma. Been part of the Team USA basketball's junior national team for his age level, class of 2026. Again, 6'7" wing, national top 10 5-star. This guy's a knockdown perimeter shooter, a very good player, high floor IQ, good length and size. He plans on being at the game tonight, as do Terrion Burgess. We reported this weeks ago. National top 35 4-star Central Arkansas guy. Benton Panthers, big 31-point, 11-rebound game last night and a 2-point win over Cabot. for Benton that Terrion Burgess, the 6'9" combo forward, will be in attendance tonight at Bud Walton Arena, as will class of 2026 national top 30 guard Jacob Lanier, 6'6" out of Maumelle. Love Jacob Lanier's game, love Terrion Burgess' game, love Montgomery's game. Arkansas is getting the right guys in. You got to keep getting them to campus. You got to put them in these kind of atmospheres. It's a weeknight game, which makes it harder for some of the other guys to come. And then again, they get these teams at this time of year aren't just playing Tuesdays, Fridays. They're playing all the time. Holiday tournaments, different events that are going on, and sometimes not even locally. They go around to other parts of the country to play. So Arkansas is going to have 3 guys in at least. So that'll be really good because you got 3 top 35 guys. One of them's in the top 10 nationally, and it's your future, class of 25, class of 2026. The more you get them on campus, the more you stay on their radar, the more you're able to keep them interested in the Arkansas Razorbacks, and your brand's been really good. A win tonight would be huge. The crowd's going to be great. So we'll see what Arkansas does with it from the recruiting aspect. The other thing is the new NIL deal. That could be a really big deal across the board for Arkansas athletics, and basketball factors into that. I've been hearing some things in the last year or so that the money for basketball NIL for the Razorbacks not been quite as good as the rumors that have circulated. You hear different things, but from a couple of sources I really trust, that might have been the case. And so you hope this new setup will benefit everybody, and that's why you got to take that part of it so seriously now. Because it's pay for play at the college level. That's just what it is. And Arkansas is going to have to compete other than just putting a great brand and develop players and get them exposure. That's important, but NIL is too. So that's big news. The elephant in the room should be Arkansas Duke tonight. Arkansas's been on a slide. They're not ranked. It's the first time ever these teams come into the game where both teams aren't ranked. The history's been incredible. But the elephant in the room is not all the attention on that. It's Bobby Petrino coming back to will Elohim play like a top 5 player? We have to see. Some top 5 players aren't the same when they get to college anyway. So there's that element. Plus, he feels like he's fully recovered. The recruiting services, penalized him anyway. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on him, and we've got a whole season to evaluate him and see what happens. But getting back to Bobby Petrino, this is big news. I know we talk basketball, but this is to me, I started thinking about this because all the attention really that you would have hoped for Arkansas Duke in this nationally televised first ever ACC SEC Challenge, a little bit of luster off of what Arkansas did in the Bahamas, now no longer ranked. I think the other thing is the hiring and the announcement of Bobby Petrino takes up a lot of oxygen in the room, and I think it's actually right now the football program needs it. It's the kind of boost it needs. If Arkansas wins tonight, people are paying attention to that. But Bobby Petrino, and this is what I was really thinking about, outside of Musselman, this is probably the most dynamic coach when you look at the big two, football, basketball. Probably the most dynamic coach of the last 10, 15 years at Arkansas. Easily, I think it's easy to say that, but I think Musselman's clearly that for basketball. And I started thinking about these guys, how they're both very similar in this sense. They are both detail-oriented, A-type personality, probably micromanagers, and the staffs and the guys that they put around themselves really have to buy into their vision. They're not CEO types in the sense of dispersing responsibilities. They take a lot of accountability in all the details. Petrino was a coach that way when he was a head coach. Petrino coached that way when he was the head football coach here. Musselman does it that way in basketball. There's similarities there, and these are the 2 most successful coaches Arkansas's had in the Big Two. We know what Dave Van Horn's done in baseball, and it's an important sport. Don't want to not mention that sport in the Big Three, but just going back to the Big Two because it's not been as consistent there. It's just been as of late with Musselman. It was that pocket of time before Petrino, popped a wheelie and rode a Harley out of town. But those 2 guys are similar in those ways. Of course, Musselman's been a lot more of a persona through all the social media stuff, and a character that way, and building his brand that way. Petrino wasn't really that kind of guy, and that was really when he was here, sort of when social media was really starting to get going. It wasn't as big as what it is now in terms of people utilizing it like they do now to market and brand. But now Petrino comes in, and I think it's a great thing for Arkansas football in terms of what his value is just doing the job, X's and O's. And so right now it's interesting times at Arkansas, especially today. We'll see if Petrino's at Bud Walton Arena and announce there tonight, or if he attends and they put a camera on him and just say he's there. That'll be interesting to see if he's in town for that. If anybody's seen anything about that, I haven't yet to confirm it or not. But what we do know is the Arkansas Razorback basketball team will be there. So will the 7th-ranked Blue Devils. We're going to sign off now, 50 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It's the Arkansas Razorbacks, 4-3, number 7 Duke, 5-1, the first ever ACC SEC Challenge. Tonight, Bud Walton Arena in Fayetteville. It's going to be jam-packed. It's going to be wild. Dignitaries are there, Scotty Thurman, other Hogs from the glory days. We know what Arkansas Duke meant 30 years ago, but it's 8:15 Central Time PM on ESPN. Until next time, see you then. Post game tonight.